Welcome back to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. Today's conversation is about something deeply practical, but also deeply human. What happens when we stop reacting to the world and start taking ownership of our place in it? It's a great question. So much of leadership and so much of life is shaped by the stories we tell ourselves when we're under pressure, the moments when we're feeling stuck, when we feel defensive or pulled into patterns that keep us from moving forward. And that's where the empowerment dynamic comes in. Last year, I was introduced to a book called The Power of TED. It's written by David Emerald. And this TED is a mnemonic for the empowerment dynamic. And it's a powerful way to step out of drama and back into agency. And one of the most challenging questions that my guest shared with me today that we can ask ourselves is, what is 100% mine to do? What is mine to do? It's such a grounding question because it cuts through the blame, it cuts through the noise, and it asks us to focus on the part that we actually own. My guest today is a guy called Daniel Rellaford. He's the CEO of the Center for the Empowerment Dynamic. And in this conversation, we explore not just the framework, but the mindset behind TED, behind this idea of empowerment. We look at what keeps people trapped in old roles, what real empowerment demands of us, and how that one question and others can shift the way we lead, relate, and respond to others in our world. So my invitation is you grab a pen and paper, settle in. This is a conversation about responsibility, clarity, agency, and the freedom that comes when we stop asking who's at fault and start asking with honesty, what is 100% mine to do? And a warm after-dinner leadership welcome to Daniel Rellaford, who's the CEO of the Center for the Empowerment Dynamic. Welcome, Dan. Daniel? Dan?
Hey, Daniel. Daniel's great. Yeah.
Daniel.
Simon.
Okay, great.
Simon,
Daniel, I should have asked you beforehand. It's lovely to have you with us. It's lovely to have you with us. And thank you so much for joining the call. We're going to be looking at some of a book that I read last year, which is called The Power of TED, the Empowerment Dynamic. So we'll talk about that as we go through this conversation. I really found this inspiring, by the way, and very genuinely really helpful. And so I'm looking forward to exploring it a little bit more because I know the listeners will really benefit from reading it, but also understanding the concepts behind it. But before we get into that, we are around this virtual dinner table, and I'd like to ask you, what food reminds you of your childhood?
Simon, thanks for having me on the podcast. I always think about these pinwheel pasta noodles that my mom would make. She would put this kind of red sauce mixed with sour cream. We call them just orange pasta. And that was my favorite. I loved that all the time. Get some hamburger in there. Pretty simple comfort food, but I love that.
Okay. When you visit your parents, is it a food you still crave?
Oh, absolutely. And I asked my wife to make that too.
Very good. Now, you mentioned your mum. For those seasoned listeners who have been with us for a few years will recognize the surname here. Your father was one of our previous guests on the show, episode 93, back in 2024. I was just checking my notes. It's like, wow, the time flies so fast. Barry. And so I believe this is the first father-son guest combo that we've had. So you're landmark guests for us, Dan.
Excellent.
And no pressure, but your dad's episode is the most listened to episode of all of our episodes.
Wow. Well, we'll have to beat that, Simon.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. For those that don't know you, what is the Center for the Empowerment Dynamic? What are you CEO of?
Thank you. The Center for the Empowerment Dynamic is a leadership development company. We work with companies and individuals to help them to work better together and to see themselves as creators, which we will talk about in a little bit. And the organization's been around for 20 years, and I became the CEO of this organization 6 months ago as part of the succession planning from the original founders.
Yeah, amazing. And I love what you're doing, and I'm excited to support it in this conversation. We always love to explore what 3 leadership lessons do you wish you'd learned earlier? And I'd love to find out what those are for you.
Thanks, Simon, for the question. So As what I've learned is there's three that I've learned as a leader of the empowerment of the Center for the Empowerment Dynamic. The first is how I see problems and seeing them not as
Yeah.
problems. So it's really this ability to see a problem, to feel a problem, to see that problem, and then to say, what's really going on here? How do I really feel about it? And to see an opportunity within the problem. The second is how do I see people as a leader? And because that's really the basis of great leadership is how we see people. So I've learned how to see other people as fully capable, fully able to make their own choices, to do their best job, and to see them as creators. And then the third thing is to be a challenger in the way that I speak with others, to speak the my perception and my perspective of what is really going on in a truthful way and in an intentional way with a learning intention.
Okay. Let me play those back and check I've captured those right. So we've got this idea that problems are not problems, we can see them as opportunities. The second, that we can see others as being fully capable of choice, decision making, and finally, learn to speak the truth, take on a challenger role and ensure that truth is spoken. And that will help to create trust, greater trust in a relationship.
That's right. Greater trust and the also being able to help the person ultimately help fulfill the objectives or the outcomes that you want to achieve, but also be able to help the person that's in front of you. So often we hide from the truth. We don't really say things as they are, and we are nervous to be able to hurt somebody's feelings or to
Yeah.
say something as it really is. So what I've learned is that on that third one, it's just being when you learn to tell the truth as it really is and to do it from a place of a learning intention, it creates a strong bond of trust between you and that other person. And ultimately, it's helping that other person. Whereas if you had gone maybe with your initial feeling of, oh, I don't want to offend that person. I don't want to really tell them how it is. You end up having the result that you don't get to build that foundation of trust with the person, and the person doesn't grow.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. We're in that third piece. We'll go back to the other two in a moment. Let's stay where we are. And I love this idea of how it really is. What if the other person is saying, that's not how it really is, Daniel? That's just your perception. That you're making assumptions about how it really is. That is not how it really is.
Yeah, that absolutely happens. When we say so in this, maybe I could go back for a second and talk about this idea of a challenger. Would that be okay, Simon?
Of course, yes.
Wonderful. So one of the things that we're going to be we'll talk about is, I think to best explain this is to introduce the Cartman drama triangle, which is one of the frameworks that we talk about in the Power of TED. In the late 1960s, there was a psychologist named Stephen Cartman who developed this triangle that explains dynamics that occur when we are in drama. And the word drama can mean many things to many people. We don't, the way that we use the word drama is we say that drama is the interpersonal conflict, it's the interpersonal friction that occurs between people and within ourselves, sometimes visible, sometimes invisible. And when these drama situations occur, which is very human, happens when we're stressed, when we're tired, when something's unexpected, when change happens, when disruption occurs, we tend to fall into one of three. Actually, we end up falling into all of these reactive roles. First being a victim, the second being a persecutor, kind of a controller, and the third being a rescuer. And these are very human dynamics that we play, and we hop around in all of these. The empowerment dynamic introduces three alternative roles to the Cartman drama triangle. The alternative to persecutor role is a challenger. So, as an example, if I had a boss for a while in a job that I worked in consulting, that I just could not stand this person. Just had such a hard time with this person, and I saw this person as a persecutor. They're always on me. They're never helping me. They're never giving me the support that I need. What I realized later on, as I thought back on that, was to say, wait a second. I was allowing that person, or I was allowing myself to see that person as a persecutor rather than to see them as a challenger. Now, how we see somebody, whether they're doing the exact same thing as, it doesn't necessarily have to change their actions. We can see them as a persecutor or a challenger. And that person may be telling us something that we don't agree with.
Yeah.
And yet we can say, you know what? I will take that challenge. I will take that information as a challenge rather than as persecutor. And I can say, what can I learn from this situation? Because if you're perceiving it that way, then there's some truth to you that it is that way, even if I don't see it that way. It allows me then, as someone who is fully capable and able to make a choice, and to then choose a better response, to say, okay, well, if you're perceiving it that way, then I can do something about it. So that's a long response to your question, Simon, but what I'd say is that the truth that we see when we say the truth teller, we don't mean the truth with a capital T. We mean the perception, our perception of what is really going on, and to be able to speak that in a way that is honest, that is straightforward, that has a learning intention rather than a kind of putting down intention. And that gets us closer to, the capital T truth.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good answer. So I think, well, it's a great answer. You did some gesturing for those that aren't on video. You described the three elements of the drama triangle, almost like shaping your hands with the different planes of the triangle there. And so if we can try and represent this, we've got an isosceles triangle with a flat end at the top pointing downwards towards victim. We've got persecutor and rescuer as the other points of the triangle, the drama triangle. Yeah. And then we've got a mirror image to that with almost like an arrow pointing upwards, which is the empowerment dynamic, with creator at the top, challenger as this mirror image to the persecutor, and coach to the rescuer. Yep. Hopefully you can visualize that in your mind's eye, those two things. And so we've just been talking there specifically about this idea of a persecutor versus a challenger role. Have I described that well enough, do you think?
You've described that perfectly. And so the way to think about it is that every role on and I'm doing the triangle again on my hands here. But so the reason, and maybe this will help for remembering for those that are listening, the reason that the drama triangle is downward facing, so isosceles triangle that is on its point, is because this is unstable. It's a very unstable situation that we're in. And it's very common to play all three roles, sometimes simultaneously, but oftentimes in the same relationship. So for an example, I'm trying to help my little brother who doesn't seem to be able to get a job. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do interview prep for him, and I'm going to help him. I'm going to write his resume for him. Oh, but he's not responding to me. So, he's not really liking the help that I'm giving him. Oh, well, I'm going to be kind of upset with him now. And then I assume this role of kind of persecuting him. So I start out as a rescuer. I'm going to fix this for him. Then I see him as incapable and I become the persecutor. And then I feel like a victim because, well, I've done everything I can and there's nothing I can do and it's not my fault. And we just play this. And so that's why the triangle is downward facing is it's very unstable. We play these roles and it's not very fun. The empowerment dynamic is on a stable base where we feel at rest, we feel intentional, we're really making choices intentionally towards what we want.
Yeah.
Is that, is
Do
that
you know,
helpful?
I don't remember that. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love that because I don't think I got that fully from the book actually in terms of the impact of the triangles, and I don't know if it's mentioned there, and I just didn't notice it. But it was, I love that instability analogy of that, and I recognize it in myself when I am in the drama triangle. I recognize that instability and and the power and the strength that comes from being in that in the empowerment dynamic as an alternative. Yeah, as in internal, feeling resourceful, feeling strong in that space. Okay, that's really good. So you've linked us nicely into one of the other elements there, which is not seeing problems as problems and seeing them as opportunities. Now that sounds like that's a nice thing to say, and oh yeah, that's nice self-help speak. How do we make that happen in a reality? How do we see problems as opportunities when they feel like
Yes.
problems? They're heavy and they're hurting.
Uh-huh.
This is
Yes.
real.
Yes. Yes. This is one of the, I would say this does seem like a social media platitude that is very simple to write and yet so hard to put into practice. This is a very real lesson that I've had. Um, Shortly after acquiring this business, we had a transaction where I'll just give you a brief story to illustrate this. But
Yeah, it's great.
we had this large sum of money that we had sent off, and yet there was an administrative error, and the funds were misplaced into the wrong bank account somewhere far away into someone else's bank account, and it was a huge stress to me. I can say that I was just overwhelmed by stress because I didn't know where this money was. And while we knew it hadn't gone to a fraudulent account, we just still didn't know. We were working with banks, and my bank said, "Oh, this could be 90 to 120 days until we get this back." And it was
Oh
all
my
these things.
goodness. Right.
And it was just an overwhelming, stressful situation. And it paralyzed me for hours on this one day that I was working through this. I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't focus on anything else. And I had this conversation with a couple of my partners, one of which was Donna Zajan, who is the co-founder of this business. And one of my partners said, "Isn't this such a good opportunity?" And I was just looking at him saying, "How could this be good? There's nothing good about this at all." And he said, "Well, isn't it so good though? Because look what you're learning from this experience, and look at the opportunity that we've given someone else where these funds have landed to be truthful, to be honest, to say, hey, I got funds that don't belong to me, to send them back to the bank. It's, who knows what that's doing for that person." And it just was a total different way of looking at it. And what I've learned from that experience, and everything worked itself out within 3 days. The funds were back in the account. Much of the stress that I had, a whole day wasted on just emotion was
Yeah.
not necessary. I didn't need to have that because the situation was working itself out. And even if it hadn't, there would have been something I could have done. But so oftentimes when we look at our lives and we see something happen that we weren't expecting, we see it as a problem, and our emotion clouds our judgment to be able to see things as they really are and to say, okay, well, let me do something about this. And so when I say problems aren't problems, of course we all experience things that are every single day we have things that happen to us. And I think I think the rate of disruption is just faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And there's so much more that we don't expect. I think the way that we can reframe that is to use the problems to get curious about ourselves and then to explore what it is that's really important to us and then what we can do about that. So let me pause there.
Yeah, I think it's amazing and also really difficult. So what a great mentality. And I love that your colleague was able to be that resourceful. I find it's much easier to do that for somebody else. Oh, see, this is an opportunity. It's like, and you're thinking like, oh yeah, it's not your money. It's my money.
Yes, yes.
This is that moment of choice, I guess, that we're talking about, like that ability to be able to choose to see this through a different lens in that moment. It hasn't changed, as you mentioned, that the money is in this other person's bank account where it shouldn't be, and there's been this error. It hasn't changed that in the moment, but I am seeing it. I'm reframing it. You said, what can we do to develop that muscle? What have you found useful?
Yeah. There's this great idea from Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. They wrote this book, and they have this whole body of work around an idea called immunity to change. And what they this idea that we use in our work that says that behind every complaint is a commitment. So there's a commitment behind every complaint. And what that means is that every time we are upset about something or something is bothering us or unexpected, it's because we've made a commitment somehow to honor something, and we feel that we've perhaps infringed upon that commitment. One of the ways that we can develop more resourcefulness is to be able to look at what's bothering us, to take a step back and say, what is it about this that's bothering me? And to ask ourselves, is there some commitment that I've made to myself that I need to look at and say, what's the value here? Now, obviously, misplacing a lot of money is, probably a commitment. Most people have the same commitment of wanting to be responsible, wanting to be trustworthy, and that was certainly what I was working on. I think this shows up in much more subtle ways. Think about the last time you were annoyed about something and say, what was it that I was annoyed about? I had misplaced something, my headphones, in fact, misplaced my headphones. And I remember, I let my wife use these and where are they? And I was complaining and why, but then to take a step back and say, why is that bothering me? What is it that I really care about in this situation? And if you can do that, if you can pinpoint the value that you really care about, it allows you to develop the muscle to say, okay, well, what do I really want in this situation? Well, I want to find the headphones, and I want to be more careful about my things because my value is being responsible or taking care of things that I have. And so why don't
Yeah.
rather than being upset with someone, why don't I think about a a new thing I can do so that I can take care of my things. What I really want is to take care of my things. Well, I'll do it in this way. So there's a reframe that helps us to develop the muscle of seeing things, of not seeing problems as problems. And of course, it will always happen. But it's a daily practice.
Maybe this is a nice link into the second point about seeing others as capable. The way you're positioning that, it could be easy for somebody, including me, to think, my value is I don't want this person to break my things. Well, this person has broken this thing for me before, or this person lent this from me and they never gave it back, and so I'm wanting to protect my stuff from these other people that are trying to take things from me or break my things or are careless with my things. I think purposefully and intentionally you have framed that as the responsibility sitting with Daniel as you've described that. rather than somebody else doing something to you. Are you getting a sense of my query here? I know I haven't asked you a question yet, but like, how do we retain that sense of personal responsibility and seeing others as being capable of decision making and choices?
Oh, it's such
I
a
think it
good
was
question.
inferred in your. I think it was inferred in your comments,
Yes.
and
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. So, like, what? How do we keep that personal responsibility?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I love what you're saying, Simon, because there is absolutely an element of trust. How do we trust this person, and do we do we just openly kind of open arms give everything to everyone, or do we have smart trust? You know, I'm hearkening back to episode 93. Um, the way to that I think about this is that we ultimately have to believe. I believe that everybody is doing their best. Now, if I see somebody and I say that person is their best is probably not what I think their best could be. And yet, if we believe that everyone is doing their best or trying their best with what they have, then it allows us to meet them where they are. And when we meet people where they are, it doesn't mean that we're completely giving them everything. And we're saying, you know, you can have the keys to my house and here you go. We're making an assessment at the end of the day to say, you know, where do we see this person at in terms of their ability to be trusted and their ability to take on responsibility and execute on something. And yet, when we believe that people are doing their best with what they have, then it allows us to see them as fully capable of doing what they can, and then growing into something more than what they think they're capable of in this moment.
And what is the most common moment when a capable person slips from being that creator into one of the drama triangle roles?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's every single day. The, the thing that happens is something unexpected occurs.
Yeah.
And that's all of us, you know, it's something unexpected. We're just not expecting something to, you know, your kid comes home and they have, you know, poor grades, or you have something at work that says that there's been layoffs, or you know, you find out that AI is doing a part of your job. I mean, there's just things like that that occur that immediately put us right back into the spin. And so it's less about saying I've got to a certain level. It's more about saying what is my daily practice to come back to a more intentional, more more creator-led way of thinking.
Yeah. And what would be an example of a daily practice that you would come back to?
I'm a big believer in morning meditation, or having moments to think about gratitude. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the kind of stuff. It is the soft stuff, but it really does work when you approach your life from a perspective of gratitude and abundance. You see the opportunities much more, even if you feel like you do have a lot of scarcity in your life. So I think morning meditation is really helpful. I think when these moments happen, you are triggered or active, your kind of fight, flight, freeze, appease system is activated, then you say, okay, what do I really want in this situation? Asking yourself that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. You mentioned the word soft a moment ago, and I'd love to just explore that a little bit. What do people misunderstand about empowerment that makes it feel softer than it really is?
I think people see it as simple. They say, well, yeah, I mean, I understand, especially with our framework, if they can say, well, I can draw two triangles. I can draw a downward triangle and an upward triangle, so I think I got it. I figured it out. I think what people miss is that there's a big difference between when we understand something in our minds and really being able to put it into practice. And when and you know it's that phrase of common knowledge is not always common practice.
Mm-hmm.
And when common practice when this type of behavior becomes common practice where we really see other people as capable and then we coach them and challenge them in intentional ways, then you do truly see the results display in a whether that's your business or your family or your career. You get to really say, oh yeah, there's a huge difference with how I'm approaching my life. But you have to get to the actual embodied practice.
Understood. I had a really humbling experience in the last couple of weeks. I was thinking about a relationship that I wanted to strengthen, and in my morning meditation, I'd thought about being grateful and being more patient. And I wonder whether that actually just saying that out loud was putting me in the rescuer role. Anyway, pray for patience. I literally, a few minutes after getting up and picking up my phone, I read an email that it wasn't like I was super angry, but like I felt this frustration build up in me, and I spoke to myself. I said, "Simon, you've literally been thinking about not doing that, and within 2 minutes, it kind of triggered me in a minor way. It wasn't like a massive thing, but in a minor way, I was agitated by this message that I'd received." And it wasn't particularly, and I could look at it today and think that was no reason to get agitated by it. But and so there is this gap that can easily, and I speak for myself and I see it in others as well, this gap between this aspiration to be able to regulate well and then actually being able to do it in the moment is, I personally find that challenging, and I coach people who are in the similar space. And so I share that, and maybe I'm asking, like, how do I develop that? So we got this meditation process. I'm journaling. I'm trying to support it, and then it's in that moment being able to say, "What?" I guess it's your question. What do I really want as an outcome here?
Yes. I mean, Simon, I empathize with you. I have these moments every day, maybe every week for sure, where you read an email, you feel this way, your face goes red, even if you're by yourself, you're just upset. At least that's what happens to me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's if you can pause, you've already done half the battle. I think that's a big part of this, is that if you can pause and say, why am I feeling this way, or what am I feeling? Then you've already done half of the work. What This is not many people, there's no pause. There's no moment of introspection. It's just, I felt it, I'm reacting. I'm sending that angry
Yeah.
email, or I'm I'm shutting off the computer, I'm going home and taking a nap, I'm done. So the first thing is pausing. So the fact that you've already recognized that, I mean, I think that's half the battle. The second, I think, is for me, it's what I found is asking questions. And again, I am a novice in this. I think we are on this journey at the same time. We're co-explorers, but it's I like to ask myself a few different questions. If I'm feeling kind of, I'd say, victim-y, kind of sorry for myself, I ask myself, okay, what do I really want in this situation? What's
Yeah.
important to me? And I ask myself, what is mine to do? What can I do in this situation? What's 100% mine to do? Nobody else's. If I'm feeling upset with someone else, kind of angry, um, then I ask myself, what is my intention as I'm doing something here? If I'm responding to this person with an email, is my intention to be right, or is my intention be to really help them grow, to create growth and learning?
Yeah.
That's a question I ask myself. And then if I feel myself kind of that rescuer buildup, and for me, what the rescuer buildup feels like is high energy, kinetic, kind of this, oh, I got to do something. I gotta work. I gotta do 1,000 things. I'm going to do this thing for somebody else. I'm going to solve all the world's problems. I ask myself, I think about the other person, and I say, how am I seeing them? do I see them as capable, or do I see them as really needing my help? If they don't have my help, they're not going to be able to do this. And so those are questions that I ask myself that help me to reframe and figure it out.
All right. I mean, there's so many wonderful lines of thought that we could go down here, Daniel, and I love that question there. Let's pick up on that point. So I am looking at somebody and I'm thinking they do need my help, and that person would say, "Yes, I do need your help." So, and again, I think this might be back near where we started around what's truth and what's not, and so what type of help are we talking about here? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a distinction between offering support and offering help, and
Yeah.
the help that you're suggesting might be a more negative way of looking at that person.
Yeah, and this is a balance. I mean, most of the time we just want the thing about the drama roles is that they're not bad. In the book, David talks uses the dreaded drama triangle, but the
Yeah.
word dreaded, we kind of actually are not using that so much anymore, Simon, because
Okay.
it's not so much that it's dreaded. It's more that it's just so human. We
Yes.
love the people that we try to jump in and rescue. We oftentimes really love these people. These are the people in our closest relationships that we want to help them in any way. So it's not from a place of, I don't I think you're, a loser and I'm going to do this for you. No, I mean, I think we really care.
Right.
So it's very human, and we naturally have to play this balance. But I guess what I would say is that it depends on your role. So if I'm the manager of this person, I'm thinking in a work context primarily, then I do have a responsibility to do more challenging than coaching, probably. Depends on the person, but if that person, they need direction. I can't necessarily expect them to figure things out. And so how do I give clear direction? And then how do I check in to make sure that it's clear? If it's not clear, or if they didn't do it, then I do need to hold them accountable in a constructive way. And
Yeah.
that is just because I'm the manager. Now, other times as a manager, we can coach. Coaching is all about helping the other person get the answer and giving them empowerment to go and do. And so, but that does take some trust and time to be able to get to that point with a person. In more of a friend to friend relationship, maybe you see your friend going down a pathway that is not going to be very good for them. In that situation, you may want to jump in and do everything for them. I do think that you can act as both a challenger and a coach, but you probably want to be more of a coach in that situation rather than telling somebody this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. You're primarily wearing your coach hat. You're expressing love. You're saying what's going on for you, helping ask questions to help them see what's happening themselves. And then for time to time, when the moment's right, you may challenge. You may say, this is what I see. And I think, these principles, Simon, they go back to things that we already know. And yet
Yes.
it's helpful because it gives a language for how we can maybe think about it. Something that I like to say with people that are familiar with this framework is I say, hey, I'm going to put my challenger hat on for just a second. Then they know, hey, I'm going to, or I say, are you open to me providing an observation? And that's a way to be able to move from listening and asking questions to, I think I really have an opportunity and maybe a responsibility to say the truth and to do it from a place of care and concern.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, we need to be drawing to a close here. I feel like maybe there's a part two to be had at some point in the future, but I'd love to just explore with you what is something that you used to value that you no longer value as strongly as a consequence of learning and trying to apply these principles.
I think I value less having to know all the answers. And I think
Right.
that's something that it's hard for someone like me. I want to be, again, it goes down to that value. That value I had was to always to be responsible, to be a safe pair of hands. And yet what I've realized is that I can be curious about what's emerging rather than holding tightly to, and for those listening, I'm holding my fist, I'm holding my fist very tightly saying, I need to control, I need to make sure that this works out the way that I want it to work out. I think I'm learning, and this is very much learning, Simon. I'm learning to let go and move forward with curiosity, less than moving forward with control.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. Now, for those that want to explore this further, I mentioned earlier there's a wonderful book that you can get from Amazon and the likes, The Power of TED, TED. It's got nothing to do with TED Talks. It's the empowerment dynamic, and it's written in a parable style, storytelling style, isn't it? And you mentioned the character's name, David, who's looking out on the beach and comes in contact with a couple of individuals that help him walk through both the drama triangle and then the empowerment dynamic, and helping him understand it over the course of a couple of days. And really useful, like very practical, really good insights, very profound. As I gathered it today in preparation for this conversation, I thought, I need to read this again. I read this about 4 or 5 months ago. I need to actually go through it again and make a few more notes, because I'm still clearly needing to learn a lot more in terms of how to apply it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. I have recommended it to a few people already, and I put it out there to others. I may have even mentioned it already on a previous podcast, who knows? So thank you for sharing that, Daniel. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they best do that?
Yes, you're willing to. I would say you're welcome to add me on LinkedIn, Daniel Rellaford, or and that's probably the best way. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
or I'm happy to. If you add me there, I'm happy to send you my email and we can figure out a time.
great. Thank you. I really have appreciated this. What's come up for you in this conversation that's been helpful for you?
Simon, thank you. You've just been holding the space so well. So thank you so much for having me. And I've just been enjoying getting to know you. And I think what's been coming up for me is just how it's good to be open and human with each other and with ourselves, and
Yes.
to be patient with ourselves, and it's a good reminder. Sometimes I think I spend too much time in the thinking of I should already know this. Rather, maybe I just spend a little bit more time in, huh, that's still a thing for me. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I like the way that you've maybe turned down the volume on the dreaded word of the drama triangle, and what I'm hearing is just almost like the human drama triangle. It's like that we go there and be a little bit more accepting that is a natural reaction, and particularly in the immediacy of something happening, that we might go there. How long we stay there, how long we create that, let's call it victimhood around that, I guess, is the bit that is the real the real skill, and that this becomes a daily practice of being in the more creator space of that, if I've understood that right.
yes, no, that's exactly. It's totally human. And once we the more that we kind of persecute ourselves for being there, the longer it takes to get out. So it's better to be curious and then to say, okay, let's move.
Right. And I love the question. There were several questions you asked today, which I enjoyed. But the one that I've just made a note of here is, what is 100% mine to do? I thought it was a really helpful, resourceful question to switch gears and reframe what's going on in terms of our own processing. So thank you for that. Thanks for everything you've shared. Much appreciated. Wish you continued success in helping the world become more familiar with the empowerment dynamic. We hope in our very small way that the After Dinner Leadership podcast helps to accelerate that somewhat for you and your team. And I look forward to the next conversation we have. Daniel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Take care.